I'd just like to say how overwhelmed I am, and always feel really quite privileged to be in the presence of people who make choices like the one that you have, Trish. I think all of us in life get an opportunity for choice. We all have an opportunity, and we don't realise it at times. You know, sometimes I hear patients say, I have no choice. I've got to have a transplant. But, you know, we all have choice, and we all make choices, and it's how we embrace those choices that do make the difference with what we do with our lives. And I also remember one patient saying to me, you know, life is like a deck of cards. You know, we don't know what hand we're going to be dealt, but it's how we play the hand that determines the outcome. And I think this choice in recognising, you know, you sat in that moment, you were very honest with all the emotions that you experienced, but the choice of art for you has been able to take you on a really beautiful journey of self-discovery and recognise another beautiful part of who you are. And, you know, I think all of us, you know, can have that opportunity, whether it's art, whether it's singing, you know, whether it's just reconnecting with different friends through book club or anything like that. To find an interest, I think, is very important. Scott alluded that at the beginning, you know, a couple of years ago, we did research looking at how we can further support people who are moving forward from treatment and transplant. And certainly Dr. Peter Molly expressed to us today how well people are doing on treatments. So, you know, Leukaemia Foundation set about doing a research looking at what are the gaps, what's missing, what can we do to further support people. So one of the aspects, because I haven't got time this afternoon to go into all of the aspects, but one of them is recognising health and wellbeing, fitness and exercise, and how that can impact on patient outcomes, the benefits of exercise. You may have seen the brochures that are handed out at the hospitals. They've got a whole list of, and I won't bore you with reading out the dot point form, it wasn't a PowerPoint presentation, but please take a brochure and have a look at what the benefits can be with exercise. It's a free opportunity that Leukaemia Foundation are offering patients. It's a 12-week commitment where you are assessed by exercise physiologists, and you're given a home program that you can, you know, participate in your own homes. And then because it's a part of a qualitative research, we ask that you, from week 4 to week 12, participate in an hour session twice a week. And that's also incorporating the social aspect of things and how important it is to make those connections. Like even through the myeloma newsletter, you're making connections by hearing and reading the stories of others, by seeing how research is moving forward, and just, you know, that connection with the Leukaemia Foundation too, in knowing what we're about and knowing what we're offering. So instead of, you know, telling the scientific support services point of view of Fit to Thrive, before I change you over to Alan Hill, because Alan is one of our very privileged, I guess, participants. And we do have a couple of other Fit to Thrive participants who have just finished their 12-week challenge, and they're looking good. I'm going to pass it over to Alan, just so that he can share with you from a personal perspective what he got out of the 12-week program, because I think that's far more interesting for you guys than me. But I'm happy to speak to anyone who's interested. So is Michelle, who, if you want to inquire about it, we're the key people to ask from a foundation's point of view. But I'll pass you over to Alan.
Just to give you a brief background where I've come from, diagnosed with MGUS in 2003 and suddenly spiked to multiple myeloma in 2012. Had a transplant in April 2013, and I'm still on maintenance therapy of thalidomide, Iridia and Intragam. So at the moment the myeloma is quite in recession. I'm down to level 6 in the paraprotein band. The 12-week course, Marianne stole some of my thunder in briefly explaining That's all right. No, it's all right. But as she said, it's basically 12 weeks. When you volunteer to join the program, you have to fill out a couple of forms which requires your oncologist to countersign that you're okay to go through with it. My oncologist was away when this happened, and I ended up with one of the other oncologists, and he commented to me that oncologists were very good at hopefully curing people of multiple myeloma, but then they just let them go out into the world and look after themselves physically and socially. And he said it was going to be a very positive thing for patients with multiple myeloma. The 12 weeks includes an information session where we all met with the people from the Leukaemia Foundation and from Aspire Rehabilitation is where it takes place. There were then 2 weeks of an initial assessment, one-on-one, with an exercise physiologist, and then 2 weeks of reviewing. The actual initial assessment is quite interesting. It's not only finding out about who you are and what your life has been as far as illness and medical conditions, but it's also a series of measurements, and I'm still not fully aware of what all the measurements mean, but to just give you an example, I use a little machine that's got a laser light in it, and they'll put it there on your shoulder, and you have to do that or you have to do that, and they're taking measurements. Then halfway through the 12 weeks, they do it again. The idea to seeing whether there's been improvement in your flexibility or in the way in which you move, in what you can do with your limbs, your arm up your back or over your back. And then at the end of the 12 weeks, which was last Friday, they did it again. And obviously that's all going into the report that will come back to the Leukaemia Foundation. The actual program that we did, which was 2 days a week for an hour each day, there was 5 in our group, Lauren being one of the other ones. Not all multiple myeloma sufferers, the other 3 had other blood cancers, but we had to then do our own programs. We were a group of 5, but individually we had our own programs. We all weren't doing the same exercises. Some of the exercises were the same, others were totally different, depending on your own capabilities, and they're very caring in taking into account any physical disabilities you might have, whether it's just to do with, in my case, with some possible bone fractures, and making sure that the exercises I did didn't interfere with what problems I had. They also gave you a home program. They weren't strict about it, but they did ask you to try and do it most days. But I don't know if they were really concerned if we didn't do it. They didn't ask us if we were doing it or not doing it, but we were all very conscientious and we all did it every day, didn't we, Lauren? But no, the program was, with only 5 of us in a group, our exercise physiologist, Sam, was able to be with each of us individually during that hour. And it's not just about doing the exercises. They place more emphasis on doing it correctly. I don't know if I've been through sporting times in your earlier days, but we did exercises when we were training, but we did them. But we didn't think about how we were holding our body or what we were doing. But with this program, for instance, if you're doing an exercise that involves a wall, your shoulders have to be against the wall, your middle of your back has to be against the wall, your shoulders have to be down, not hunched. And so there's all those individual things that they're picking up all the time and working with you to ensure that you're not only doing the exercise, but you're doing it properly, which then gives you maximum benefit from that exercise. And so over the 12 weeks, we gradually progressed from very low intensity to a much higher intensity, and after the 6-week review they then changed the program for each individual, either increase the intensity of a particular exercise or bring in other exercises, and even bring in using of weights. Not weights in terms of bodybuilding, but weights to use with the exercise, just to put more strength on those muscles that they're trying to help you with. In my case, I've found over the 12 weeks that I'd got back to where I was before I was diagnosed in terms of muscle definition, just my physical being. I'd played a lot of sport in my earlier life, and so I was conditioned to exercise, but I found that redoing this has now put a new emphasis on continuing to do it, whereas once I dropped out of sport, I still played golf, etc., and did other things, but not with the intensity that this 12 weeks program has now given me. And you can use your own speed, your own ability to do as much as you want or as least as you want. But it helps you in bringing back the physical side of what is a very severe medical condition. And I'm sure that it's helped. I must admit, after the first week, I felt like I was back in the early days of football training. The first night of training for the season, the next day you're flat out walking because you're so stiff. Well, after the first session with Sam, not quite to that extent, but you knew you'd been doing something you hadn't done for years. But I can thoroughly recommend it to anybody, and as Marianne said, if you want to have a talk to us afterwards to explain it in more detail, please do. It's a great thank you to the Leukaemia Foundation for putting us through this program, and I can't speak too highly of the people at Aspire Rehabilitation, in our case Sam, who is so caring, so understanding, no sort of normal coach standover type activities, just being with you, talking you through exercises and helping you to achieve a better outcome for all of us that are in the course.
I know fatigue is one thing.
Energy levels have increased. With the side effects of the transplant, I had some, but I didn't find fatigue really an issue. I would feel tired at certain times, but not to the extent that I'd call fatigued. You know you've been doing something, or you've been out for quite a few hours doing something, and you feel a bit off, if you like, but not to the extent of being extremely tired. I haven't really... I know I read some of the articles in the Myeloma News of people's stories and how they've had to have daily sleeps. Well, since the transplant, I haven't had a sleep during the day.
Some of the other patients who may have the other blood cancers, they have commented that the exercise program has certainly helped with their fatigue, that they might be sufferers.
I found the biggest thing was that I lost about 6 or 7 kilos during the transplant process, and I was putting some of it back on, but not with any sort of strength. And this has brought back all the, physical terms, the physical definition in my muscles, and especially in my legs and arms. And it just strengthens your core of your body, in other words, which does really suffer during the transplant.
I would imagine that this, prior to having a transplant, would be beneficial.
Yes, more so.
For that month in hospital.
Yeah.
We've got some people who went through the program who are on treatment, and that's where the Aspire team, aren't they, Michelle, are quite willing to work with the patient just to try and help them make that commitment to the 12 weeks.
Because I was in that category where a transplant could have been a bit iffy because of my age. But my oncologist said that because of my fitness level it wasn't an issue. He told me one day I was one of the fittest 60-year-old patients he had, but then he added he didn't have many 60-year-olds. Well, I want to do something. Lauren and we were talking, the five of us had coffee last week after it was all over. I don't know whether it's to celebrate or to commiserate. And we were saying, you know, that like Lauren lives one end of Brisbane, I live the other end of it, and to come into Aspire regularly would be a bit much probably. But even if we came once a month, just to make sure that we're still on track, because we are going to get a home program based on the results from last Friday. So there's an ongoing home program they give you to pursue. But yes, whether it's to be at a local gym, but using the program that Aspire Rehabilitation gives you.
Yeah, so I thought, like, you know, we could still, for me, I think I'd like to go back still once a month and see Sam to review the exercises that he would give me in the home program. He also said he'd give me something as sort of a gym program if I wanted, and then go back and see him once a month. So, I mean, for me to see him out of my own pocket, so it was $105 for an hour. But then I think, you know, the Leukaemia Foundation has been wonderful to give us a 12-week program for free. And at some point we all have to take responsibility for ourselves.
And
I
there
think
is an option too through the
there is
extended
that
care plan.
yes,
But
that gives you
not all
fine.
GPs look at that.
Yeah.
So you'd have to discuss that with your GP to just ensure whether or not.
But I do think that, you know, something like that where you can go away and do that program elsewhere and then go in and have a review over an hour to make sure you're still doing the right exercises or feel, well, yes, you're doing that so well, let's change that, let's give something that, you know, a bit more weight or, you know, a different cardio or different balance sort of option, that it's well worth continuing with.
And maintaining those connections.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I suppose one other comment I would have is mentally and psychologically, and just your outlook on life is more positive with the exercise program.
Yeah.
Improve balance, improve stability, improve attitude towards life in a positive.
Yeah, I suppose it's a commitment you make for 12 weeks, 2 days a week. So there's a regimental position to, especially when you're retired. You know, it doesn't mean as if you've become extremely lazy and all of a sudden you're back into a routine, but there is a routine attached to it, and the thing of knowing that you should be doing it each day or most days at home as well. You put every effort into doing the required number because it's for your benefit. It's not like football training where you're trying to get out of doing the last 5 or 6 push-ups because the coach isn't watching you. But whereas this is really, you know, you'll even go the other way. Sam will come around talking to you and adjusting what you're doing, and you're supposed to be doing 20 of something, and because he's talking to you, you've lost count. You probably do 30 of them. And he's yeah, but no, it's well worth it. Aspire is a great place to do it. It's air conditioned, so parking is a problem, or not a problem. No, but there is free parking off street if you can get in. It's a bit of a challenge, but there is street parking, which is normally okay.
And the other thing, if you're really struggling with your fitness and your health, it's a great way to kickstart yourself, you know, getting back to some sort of form, you know, just some sort of fitness. I mean, I felt like I lost a whole lot of fitness well and truly when I went through the treatment and stem cell transplant, and for me it was a kickstart to sort of getting back to where I was. It was having something really to focus on.
Thank you.